Welcome back, listeners, to the Empathic Leader, where we talk all things leadership, emotional intelligence, and empathy. I am Dr. Melissa Robinson-Winemiller, and I am so glad to have you here for today's conversation, because the farther we get this conversation out and the more people we get talking, the better. So please remember to like, subscribe, and comment so we can keep this conversation rolling. You're going to love my guest today. Her name is Jan Raeder, and she's someone that I've met in a speakers bureau that I'm part of. And she's going to be a fantastic person to talk to on all things leadership, and especially self-leadership. She helps individuals and organizations thrive through personalized well-being education, transformative speaking, and her M.O.R.E framework, which this stands for meaning, optimism, relationships, and engagement, which, as someone who talks about communication and connection and understanding through the use of empathy, I think that's something we could all use more of. So I'm going to be very interested for us to dig into that a little bit deeper. She talks about well-being, the definition of which being that understanding wellness incorporates abstract ideas, phenomena intertwined with personal culture, tradition, psychological themes, and evidence-based research, with wellness being an active process that is subjective. She believes everyone is capable of living their best life. Transformation happens when we push beyond our perceived limits is one of the things I saw on her website that really made me go, yeah, this is going to be a fantastic person to have come in and talk to us today. With over 30 years of experience in martial arts, positive psychology, and behavioral change, she empowers others to lead with purpose, build resilience, and live well. And just to add to the cake, she is a proud national gold medalist in AAU karate, earned both her bachelor's and master's degrees, master's in well-being education, in just 4 years, starting with only 19 credits, and wants to be able to help everyone create a life of balance, growth, and fulfillment. Let's bring to the stage Jan Raeder. Hi.
Hello.
How you doing?
I'm so happy to be here today. I can't wait to hear some of the feedback from the folks that are listening.
Oh, absolutely. Our audience, we're growing. We're starting small, but I would rather have a quality than a quantity audience anyway. So I'm sure there will be some.
I'm with you.
Yeah. So I would like to actually start. I mean, that's a nutshell. So you actually sent me 2 bios, a short one and a long one. And I had the privilege of getting to see the longer one and see a more fleshed out version of your bio. But I would love for you to fill our audience in a little more on, who you are, how you got to this point, and why you're driven to do what you do.
Well, let's see. Who am I? I have a very eclectic background. I'm lucky that way. I've always worked with small businesses. I had a very short time with a extremely large business, which I didn't care for that, but anyway, because there was unions there and whole thing, and that was just not my thing. But anyway, I've always had a passion for teaching people. My mother used to tell me all the time I was a teacher, and I didn't really want to do the conventional kind of classroom sort of teaching. So I wound up going into the martial arts. It's over 30 years ago. I'm retired now because in 2018, actually, I retired from the martial arts. And it was during that time, toward the end of my career in martial arts, that I went back to college because I was looking around to see if I could work somewhere else, do another thing. And everything at that point, like in 2013, 14, so on, everybody wanted to have paper. They wanted you to have paper. And I had all sorts of experience with business and running a business because I did run the martial arts school. So I went back to school, and I went to a non-traditional college, actually university in New York State. And they work with people like myself returning to school. And when I started working with a PhD, she was like, oh, well, what do you think about wellness and health coaching and all of that? And I was like, oh, okay. So, and that's kind of pretty much how my experience in all of my careers. I just kind of went, yeah, that sounds interesting. Okay, I'll just go for it. So jump in with both feet. Anyway, so I decided I didn't want to coach people because I had been doing that for 30 years. And I developed a certificate program to be used in higher education during my master's degree for people who wanted to become wellness coaches. And because at that time, you could get a certificate online, like after doing it for 6 weeks. And my experience has been when you're really trying to help someone in the health and wellness space, you have to have a lot of knowledge about in a lot of different areas. And that, and even if you don't use all of those areas with a particular person, you have to be able to point them in the right direction of vetted sources. As you know, you have a PhD, you want to make sure that the sources you're using are legitimate.
Yeah.
So I wound up developing that. And then prior to the pandemic, I taught a course at a local school, a local college. It's about a half an hour down the road from me. And it was on well-being theory. And people loved it. They had a great time. They enjoyed it. And they asked me to come back and teach the class. But then the pandemic happened. So I went, oh, okay. That's not happening. And so then during the pandemic, because I do much better in person. I like to, because you can read the room, you can feel the energy in the room. And that's been my experience also too, as a martial artist. You learn about nonverbal communication from people. Yeah. So that was really my forte, as opposed to this kind of experience. So anyway, I thought, what can I do? And I decided to write a book. I decided that I would write my book based on my course that I taught, which actually there's much more in the book than I actually taught in the course, because, I only had 2 hours for each class. So, so that's what I did. And here I am now. And I'm just I'm really trying to get out there to speak to people about this because I think it's so important. I think understanding who you are first is critical, because, and if you think about leadership and what we're talking about here, and empathy, and I love that you mentioned self-empathy, because we're our own worst critics. So we do need to be gentle with ourselves, but at the same time, we also do need to be realistic too. You have to, sometimes people don't like to look in the mirror, but sometimes you have to. So that's kind of my message is, when you are talking to leaders, and especially the leaders, if they haven't dealt with their own baggage, you're carrying extra bags into work all the time. And I used to tell my martial arts students, which is why I loved it so much, because it was like an hour vacation when you came to class. It was like an hour vacation, because we didn't come out there and say, oh, here's a phone call for you, or so-and-so needed you to pick this up on your way home, or, oh, gee, did you forget to turn your stove off? We're not doing any of that, because you have this time for yourself. So I used to tell the students, you need to leave your bags at the door. Don't carry your bags in with you. And I think that's the thing. If we're carrying this extra baggage, you can't lead well, because you haven't dealt with your own stuff. Which you mentioned, the M.O.R.E framework. I don't know how you want to do this. I could dominate the whole entire conversation. I apologize ahead of time. I could do that. And I try not to do that, because it's your show. So.
Well, I appreciate that, because two of the things that I do want to make sure I bring out to our audience, that I've heard in everything that you've said. I mean, number one is the self-leadership. And even for people that are in leadership positions already, that are already in that place of leading, you do need to be able to have that self-leadership, which includes self-empathy, being able to have the self-reflection, which leads to self-awareness, which then leads to self-empathy. It's a whole thing. And it sounds like, from what you're saying with talking about leaving the baggage at the door, that's very much what you're talking about. I mean, being able to work through this, it's not just so much that you leave the baggage at the door, but you leave it behind, because with an appropriate infusion of self-empathy, you can actually do that as a leader, so that you aren't always viewing it through the lens of whatever this baggage is. but
Yeah.
there has to be a certain amount of self-reflection, self-awareness to self-empathy. And I mean, in martial arts, I'm sure that you talk about that to a certain degree as well. And the other thing I wanted to pick up on too is that you were talking about, how there's a certain amount of connection and understanding. You wanted to bring this connection to other people. You wanted to bring this framework to other people. You're leading through your teaching.
Yeah.
And my listeners are really tired of hearing it, but I'm going to say it again anyway, because I'm just going to say it over and over. Empathy is not about feeling. It is about understanding and connection. There's 43 kinds of empathy. The feeling is only one of them. There's 42 beyond that. So through that teaching and being able to understand and connect with people, you were bringing your self-leadership forward in a way that other people could get a hold of it and use it to better their lives, the well-being, the emotional well-being.
Yeah.
Oh,
definitely, for sure. Well, that's the other reason why I like the framework, the M.O.R.E framework, M period, O period, R period, E period. Now, I will say, just so the listeners know, that's based on evidence. That's solid research. I didn't make that up. I actually jumbled it a little bit from Martin Seligman. He's the father of positive psychology, and his original framework is PERMA. And I think that's hard to remember. So, but the M.O.R.E framework essentially is those same elements, save one. I didn't include, because the A in PERMA is accomplishment. And I didn't include that because when I talk to a lot of people, I used to ask them about, so what did you accomplish today? And they would be like, I don't know. Like, didn't you celebrate that? You should celebrate that, because that's how we build our self-esteem. And that's how the next challenge that comes up, we have resilience, self-esteem. We have a knowledge that we can do that. So, celebrating accomplishments is important, but it seemed to be like the meaning, the optimism, the relationships, the engagement were much more important for me to focus on, because people need those things. And then the accomplishment comes later if you're kind of thinking the way that I do, like on every Wednesday, which today, as we get off of this, I'm gonna have to go do it. But I have a what went well thing. I participated, and I want people to do it every day, but I figure, the middle of the week, Wednesday, hump day, it's a perfect day to kind of just go, gee, what was good today? What happened today, and why? Because the meaning part is so important. Why is it that, like your work, why is it that you're doing what you're doing? I mean, that's so important, and people pick up on that. And it also makes it you able to get through those difficult times. Like I've said to people about your why, it needs to be tangible. It needs to be something you can really grab onto, because it gets you through the tough time. When you're got a video to edit, or you've got a post to make, or you've got, a client that maybe is not as wonderful, or somebody at your workplace that it's a difficult conversation you're going to have. If you're doing the meaning part and you're reminding yourself, why am I doing this to begin with? Why is this important to me to begin with? Yeah. It's so much better. And that's personal meaning. There's also meaning in general, that us as humans, we all want to be happy. We all want to have prosperous lives. We all want to make a difference, so we have these things all in common. Plus, a lot of people, and there's a lot of research related to believing in things larger than ourselves, that those people are happier, that believe in things. And I don't like to get into religion, because it's not necessarily about religion, spirituality, just knowing that there's something larger than yourself. That's so important. And what I love about this framework is everything floats back on itself. So like meaning informs your optimism informs your relationships and informs your engagement. When you're engaged, it's more meaningful for you. If you have better relationships, you're more optimistic, so everything kind of goes back on itself. And what I like about it too is people like things to be simplified for them. Everything is so complicated now. We've complicated everything so much. And if you have something that, okay, I'm going to invest my time in this. And one, I know it's not hokey, that I just read, no disrespect to People magazine, but that I just read in a People magazine article, and that this is actually evidence-based information that I provide in my book. In my book, there's tons of references, so people can dive in a little deeper if they want. But I wanted to keep it simple and little things that you could do every day that would make a difference. And they do make a difference when you do them. I'm living proof. I do these things myself every day. And, so I'm sure there's more things you can add to what we're talking about.
Well, totally, because it's interesting, because what you're basically talking about is being able to understand and query yourself in a positive fashion and in a way that is going to be productive, like with your what went well today, which I've seen that on LinkedIn. So anybody who happens to be on LinkedIn, definitely connect with Jan. We're going to have all of her handles in the show notes, so you'll be able to do that. But when we're talking like change management circles, like for the leaders and people that actually do change management and systems thinking, so where you're actually thinking of the system as a discrete entity as opposed to an organization and people, it actually all comes together within systems thinking. There's part of that that's called appreciative inquiry. And that's exactly what you're talking about, being able to question and ask, but doing it in a way that is optimistic, that is respectful, that is appreciative of what people are bringing to the table and what went well, not just this constant critique. So in a way, you're talking about doing that kind of on the micro level with a person, as opposed to on the macro level with an organization. But anything that's going to work on the macro level is going to work on the micro level, which also goes back to like Margaret Wheatley. I don't know how much people out there are going to know necessarily about her book or her idea about quantum leadership and being able to look at things on bigger and small levels as fractals. But the quantum leadership and that what we can do on the micro level, we can do on the macro level. So I appreciate that you're bringing it in at the ground level, because that's where we learn it so that we can then apply it to the larger system.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that I love that you brought that up about these systems, because I've recommended to many leaders that I've talked to do that exercise at the end of one of your meetings. Just go around the table and ask, and not everybody has to participate. They don't, it's not a mandatory thing, but when you're on a project and you have to meet with your folks that you're on the project with, why don't you stop at the end and say, well, what went well? The most important part of that is the why, because it's different from a gratitude list. I'm not opposed to gratitude lists, but this research shows that some people can find those to be tedious. And it's the why part, it's the meaning part that is what changes our brain. It's being grateful, but why am I grateful? Because otherwise, if you just go, okay, well, I'm grateful I have a roof over my head. Well, why is that important? Obviously there's many reasons why that simple thing is important, but that's what starts to change the brain, because as I'm sure you are well aware, we are negative grabbing brains is what we have. And this comes from our evolution. It was a protection mechanism. Don't go down over there because there's an apex predator, that I could die if I went over there. Don't eat that weird colored thing because I could die, from it. So the negativity was important for our survival. Now, I'm not saying that people don't have the opportunity to be chased by an apex predator now. I'm not saying that, because there are places where people do have that. Thankfully, I'm not in necessarily one of those. Not that I have bears here, but they're not. I know. So, attack. But you see what I'm saying. Yeah. But the thing about it is it's related to stress. And, like when you're in a workplace situation, if you have deadlines and you're stressed about those, your body responds the same, whether it's an apex predator chasing you or a, deadline chasing you. But the problem with the deadline chasing you versus the apex predator is the apex at that time, once the danger had passed, when you're talking about going back several years, once the danger had passed, your body goes back to where it's supposed to be. Now that doesn't happen that much, because people stay in that stress mode and become sick, you wind up becoming sick. So, or burning out, or any of these things that you hear a lot of times. So what went well, what's so important about it is checking in with people. And it's not saying that we don't recognize that things go bad, because they did, and we have to address those. But what did go well? Because we need to elevate ourselves and spiral upward from something that went well. When you do that in a meeting and you allow people to feel heard and be part of it, and then you set the tone for the next part of the project. Let's end on a positive note as opposed to ending on a negative note. Let's try to go, okay, we need to handle this. We need to get that done, but this is what we're doing really well. And let's continue with that. And again, I'm speaking in a generic capacity because it applies to each person differently and each situation differently. Yes. But it's an important thing. And each person I've told that to, and I'm so sad about this, each person I told that to, I'm like, please let me know if you use it, because I really do want to hear what happened. If you used it in a meeting, I want to know, because I do little mini research projects myself of, oh, this person did this. Oh, they did that. It worked. It actually, So any of the listeners out there, if you do it in your meeting, please let me know. I do actually want to hear. So
yeah. And there is a business foundation for this. So, I mean, definitely, and do get in contact with Jan. If you want to look at it more on the micro level, definitely check out her book and the M.O.R.E framework. If you're wanting to look at it at a just from a different point of view, the book on appreciative inquiry, and that's more in change management circles, so it's kind of a tight circle. But I mean, there is a business premise for using this, so definitely use it and do report back on that, because it does make a difference. I think the other important point too is you were talking about evolutionarily how we are hardwired to tend towards the negativity. But the other part of that too is the difference between things that are right in front of us as opposed to things that are out farther. Whatever is in front of us and happening right now is going to take a greater precedence in our brain. So if we have something negative happening right now and we have the possibility of something positive out in the future, we're always going to pick what's happening right now because it's obvious, it's visceral, it's right there. Right. That's why dieting always starts tomorrow. It just does. The pleasure of being healthy or being the way you want to be is never as great as dealing with the pain point of, if I don't get some Doritos right now, I'm going to throw the cat out the window. Right. So it's just part of our biology. So if you can take these positive things and bring them in close by saying, what went well? What can we do to make this go well all the time? How did you guys feel this went this time? It's going to take the positivity in the future and bring it into what's happening right now. Right. The human brain is amazing, but we need to know how it works so that we can circumvent the things that maybe don't always serve us very well in a modern technological office setting.
Right. Oh, for sure. Without a doubt. I mean, that's why I like some of Daniel Kahneman's work. He's actually a Nobel Prize winner. I'm sure you know who he is. Yep. I reference him in my book, and he talks about that fast and slow thinking. I mean, we are definitely wired to do that because it's easy. It's, we can just play it. We can just put that on the back burner and just let it go. And I think that is where a lot of people have the trouble, is they're just, and then they feel disconnected. They don't feel like, why am I doing this? And what, and they're not present. They're not mindful about things. And I want to bring up the relationship part is, when you're using that tool, the optimistic tool of what went well, you're going to build a relationship with not only yourself, but with other people. Because, I mean, most people want to be around positive people. They don't, they're like, oh, yay, that guy is really nasty. I'm going to go hang out with him. They just don't. People don't gravitate towards people that are upset all the time. Not that, obviously when somebody gets upset, we try to be supportive and so on and so forth. But at the same time, I like that you said, this is what's happening in the moment. But if you can stay open to say, okay, down the road, if I transcend this, what can my life look like? So the relationship part, if you're going to talk about a leader doing this, I'm going to share a little story, because one of the things I also share in my book, it's another Seligman exercise. It's called a gratitude visit, and it's a phenomenal thing. He actually used it for depressed patients. I think they did a gratitude visit, and they felt better. The person that was sharing their gratitude about someone else with them, obviously the person that you're sharing it with, it elevates them too, but it elevated their mood for up to 6 months of doing this. So what it is you take the opportunity to somebody that you're really grateful for, you write out, and you have to physically write it out. You can't do it in the form of an email. You do that. I always recommend to people, get a nice note card or a nice piece of paper or something, because you're going to give that to them. That's part of the gift. And write about 300 words. And for those people listening, 300 words is like a paragraph. So don't go. I'm not asking you to write a book to the person. Yeah. It's a couple on. It's like, and write it, and then invite them for hot beverage or something, or some kind of thing. But don't tell them why you're doing. And then this is the other important part. You need to read them your words, because that's part of the connection. You don't just go, oh, here. You need to actually open it up, read them your words, and then bring a box of tissues with you when you do it, because it's going to be emotional, and it's a huge connection. Now, why this is so important, and I love this for leaders that want to do that type of thing, because I have a friend of mine that works in higher education, and I shared this with her, and she's like, oh my gosh, my former boss wrote me a thank you note and for something I did, and gave it to, and she goes, this was like 12 years before we had this conversation. I still have it in my desk. And every time I'm feeling bad about what's going on at work, I read it. I read that note. And so leaders out there that are listening, you have no idea how powerful that is, because people then feel seen and appreciated on a really deep level. And it's such an opportunity for you to give that gift, this amazing gift, to them, and for them to receive it. So it's a powerful, powerful thing. Granted, it's great to do for a good friend of yours, anybody else too, obviously. But as a leader, making those opportunities to do that, huge. I guess I would ask your opinion on that. What do you think about that as an exercise for a leader?
Oh, absolutely. I talk all the time about how as a leader, you are always on stage. Somebody is always watching. Somebody is always being influenced by what you do, whether you think they are or not. Yeah. So if this is the kind of culture that you set, that's one of gratitude, that's one of thanks, that's one of mutual understanding and respect, that culture is going to drip down from the top. So it seems like a simple act. It seems like it's something that should make no difference at all. But the fact that this person held on to that note for 20 years is evidence that it makes a big difference. So leaders, you're always being watched, whether you think you are or not.
Yeah.
You are on that stage all the time.
Yep. Yep. And those things, and I've read quite a bit, and I'm sure you have too, that, money, not that money isn't great and everything, but giving somebody a raise isn't always great for their motivation. We have intrinsic motivation and we have extrinsic motivation. A raise is a form of extrinsic motivation, which is good, but at the same time, doing an act like this goes deeper than, okay, here's extra. And that's not to say if you can give someone a raise and they've earned it, obviously give them that raise, but do this too. Because then if you want somebody to stay with you forever and never leave you, these are the ways you do it, because that's the thing. I think that's the saddest part for me now with things that are going on, is people are jumping from job to job to job instead of being loyal and being a part of something, So I hope that trend is changing slightly, that people are going, I want to really be a part of something. Back to meaning. We're back to meaning. How can I be a part of what's going on here? And am I being heard? Am I being appreciated? How's the relationship being built here? And engagement, that engagement part, I'm engaged. I'm going to be engaged much more if I feel appreciated and heard. So I don't, like I said, these all overlap each other. That's what I love about it, that anytime you're working on any of it, like if you decide, okay, I'm going to work on meaning for this month. What am I going to do to elevate the meaning in my life and really focus in on that? Well, that's going to up your optimism. That's going to bring your relationships into a clearer focus, and it's going to engage you. So you're always working on all of these things, even if you single out one. Which I used to tell my karate students. I'm like, if you're working on that technique, it's going to help other things, so it's a good thing to invest your time in.
Well, we're coming up close to the end of time here. So I want you to let our listeners know how they can get a hold of you or where they can find you.
Well, I have my website is selfcaresensei.com. And I'm not, when I talk about self-care, I'm not talking about, a mani-pedi and, wine with your friends on a Friday night, which I'm not opposed to those things, but those aren't true self-care. True self-care is getting to know who you are and putting your best face forward. So selfcaresensei.com, my book is available on Amazon. There's some links to it on the website. It's just over a year that it's been out now. I am on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram as Self-Care Sensei Jan Raeder, and I'm on Facebook as Self-Care Sensei. So hopefully some of the people will get involved in the what went well, because I just am trying to be positive on the internet. So
yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think you have an upcoming project here as well, right?
I do. July, I'm supposed to be speaking at MIT.
Yeah.
Which hopefully that will go well. My memorization of my talk is going well. Thank you very much for a lot of your hints that you gave in your TEDx. And hopefully at some point that'll happen for me too, is a TEDx talk. I'd love to do that. And kind of following your footsteps. I really appreciate you sharing all of your journey, because that's helpful for me too, and other people.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I appreciate it too. And I think knowledge is something that should be shared.
Yes.
We don't need to hoard it. We need to share it, because then we all rise together.
Yeah, you got that right. That's why the what went well thing, we're all going to try to, if you share something, even if you don't share something and you read somebody's comment, you might, that kind of thing happened to me. I forgot about that, so it's just being optimistic is a choice. If you haven't read Viktor Frankl's work, read Viktor Frankl's work, because he's you know who he is, right? He's a Holocaust survivor. So amazing with optimism.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. All right, final question.
Yes.
If you can think of one person, alive or dead, known or unknown, that has influenced how you lead yourself or others, who is it and why?
That's a tough question, because I have a lot of different people that have influenced me. I would say probably some of the people that I had the privilege of at the martial arts school. A lot of my students, I just loved. That was my dream job. It really was, because you got to be involved, part of people's aha moments, and there's something incredible about that. It's like addicting, because you just get to be part of that. So I would say that the people that I was privileged to be part of their journeys in martial arts, they were probably one of my biggest influences, because you see bad things, people have tough times. A lot of people that were abused, or things that had happened to them, and help them to rise above that and transcend that. There's nothing like it.
Yeah. That's fantastic. And I love asking that question, because I have yet to get the same answer twice, ever, from anybody, which I think is fantastic. And I love the fact that people on the whole don't actually pull out big names or famous figures that we think of. It's usually something very personal. So I like asking that question. Yeah. Jan, it has been a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming and sharing your wisdom. And to our audience, please check out her book, catch up with her on social media, check out her website, and please remember to like, subscribe, and comment. Let's keep this conversation going. And this is Dr. Melissa Robinson-Winemiller signing off till next time. Thank you so much.